Hi, my name is Paula Coomer. I'm the author of Blue Moon Vegetarian, which is a food memoir about my and my husband's journey from plain old omnivore to vegan, and the follow-up cookbook, Blue Moon Vegan, also includes gluten-free recipes. The recipe I'm going to cook for you today is from Blue Moon Vegan, and it's called Sweet Lentil Pulao. And a pulao is a dish, an Indonesian dish that involves lentils and spices and a few other things. Also, there's a Turkish version that you can cook as well. This is my westernized version, and it's based on a recipe that I found in a cookbook called Laurel's Kitchen. That's one of my favorites from back in the 1970s. So I've already cooked the lentils, and I cook them under pressure. This is a gadget that if you don't have for your kitchen, you might want to think about getting. It's called an Instant Pot, and it allows you to cook beans and rice and things like that as you would in a pressure cooker. So they cook in a much shorter period of time and save a greater amount of nutrients than regular stovetop cooking. So I prepared the lentils, just your basic brown lentils, and then I've also prepared some rice. A traditional pulao will not have rice added, but because I'm interested in creating a complete protein between the amino acids in the beans and in the rice, I added rice to the recipe. And I like a brown basmati rice, which is highly textured and still has some of the outside grain on it so that you also get fiber and more protein. So I'm just going to mix those two together. And then the recipe also calls for chopped red onion and kind of an unusual thing, which is dried currants. Now, it's in my part of the world, it's a little bit hard to get dried currants at this time of the year. And so I substituted for the more traditional apricots, which is what you would find in the Turkish version of this recipe. So I'll just go ahead and mix those things in. The great thing about this recipe is it makes good use of leftovers. So if you have leftover rice and you have leftover lentils, you can just think, oh, I'll make a sweet lentil pulao, and your family will love you. It also calls for half a cup of pine nuts, which I just spilled. It also calls for half a cup of pine nuts, so I'll just go ahead and add those. And it takes a bay leaf. And then also a small amount of sea salt. I use Himalayan sea salt, which lacks iodine, but also hasn't been through the bleaching process and some of the other sort of undesirable processes that regular iodized salt has to go through. And this is just calling for a half a teaspoon. Normally when I'm cooking I don't measure things so much, but because this is for a group that I'm serving, I want it to turn out just as the recipe is, so I'll go ahead and measure. It also calls for some cinnamon, which seems like a funny thing to add to lentils and rice, but in the Middle East it's a pretty common thing. And I like Vietnamese cinnamon, which is a little more potent than some of the other kinds of cinnamon, and you can find it at specialty stores or at organic food marts. It also calls for white pepper, a quarter of a teaspoon. I love white pepper. I love the flavor of it, and I love the fact that it just completely disappears in recipes. So particularly if it's something that's pale colored, white pepper is nice because those black flecks don't show up that go along with regular pepper. And then also it calls for just a pinch of cardamom. Cardamom is one of my favorite spices, and so I try to look for ways to use it, but you don't want very much in this case, just a little pinch. And then it also calls for some tomato paste, just a tablespoon. And I happen to like getting tomato paste this way in little jars so that I can store it and use it, because very often, you know, you don't use an entire jar, and particularly that's the case with this recipe. And the spoon doesn't want to fit in, so I'm going to have to use 3 teaspoons instead of a tablespoon. And that's all there is to this recipe. You just mix it then, everything together. Make sure you mix it very well. The tangy taste of the apricots, or if you happen to have currants and can follow the recipe and use those, provide a nice contrast to the spices and also to the onion, the red onion. And the red onion does give a little bit of color there as well. So you just want to make sure everything is very well blended. And particularly the tomato paste. Once you get to the point where you can't see any red tomato paste on the edges, then you know that you probably have blended it enough. It has a really nice scent. The cardamom and the cinnamon just sort of rise up as you're blending. It's a very nice smell. The pine nuts are nice. They add a little bit of crunch, and they have their own flavor, as you know. Incidentally, don't pay extra money to get organic pine nuts, because a secret that a lot of people don't know is that most pine nuts are organic anyway, and they're very expensive to start with. And that's pretty much it. That's it for sweet lentil pulao. You'll take that and put it in the oven, cover it, and let it bake for 20 to 30 minutes. And it's also a great dish that you can prepare ahead of time. It's a great one for potlucks. And so you can mix it up ahead of time, put it in the fridge overnight, give those flavors a chance to blend, and then just put it in the oven for 30 minutes at 350 degrees before you're ready to head out to your event, which is exactly what I will do for my event tomorrow. Make sure you remove that bay leaf before you serve it. Otherwise, somebody's apt to bite into it and get a little bit of surprise. And that's it. That's all there is to sweet lentil pulao. A really nice side dish, but it's hearty enough also to serve as a main dish. And you'll find that children love it, and it's because of those sweet little fruits that are buried in there. That's it. Thank you.